There was something that I wanted to discuss in the intro to my Liberec to Stara Paka review, but I realised that the discussion would have been far too long to include in a normal review, so I've spun it off into its own separate video. This time, I'll be talking over footage recorded while I was driving a pair of Class 350-2s, specifically units 350-248 and 350-257, on a stopping service from London Euston to Milton Keynes. And luckily, I didn't have the same issue with the emergency brakes that I experienced last time. See my review of WCML Birmingham to Crewe for context. Quick word of warning, there's a bit of swearing in this one, so proceed at your own risk. For the longest time, I had been thinking that I genuinely wanted to keep reviewing TSW stuff long term, seeing as I have liked the game for many years, and have been following it ever since the very beginning in 2017. But from my perspective, as a long-time/loyal paying customer, it's very disappointing to see where the overall game has gone given just how much potential it had. Problems include, but are certainly not limited to, DLC often being pushed out to customers despite being in a state that wasn't fit for release, numerous add-ons essentially being left to rot, particularly the older ones like München to Augsburg, DLC prices going through the fucking roof these days, core features that get hyped up by Dovetail each time they announce a new annual iteration, only for those core features to turn out buggy, case in point, guard mode, and, of course, one can't forget DTG's controversial practice of annual releases, whose necessity I always call into question. Not to mention the infamous blurry textures ruining the experience for console players. On the topic of bugs in TSW, I ended up getting invisible NPCs again on this run to Milton Keynes. This whole situation has gotten to the point where what little excitement I still have for TSW will likely be gone before too long, unless, by some miracle, DTG finally sorts their shit out, by abandoning the annual release practice for a start. Unfortunately, the occasional good item of DLC, as we saw with Liberec to Stara Paka, and the Medway Valley line for that matter, doesn't change the overall game's shambolic state. Now I must stress that I'm still grateful for the success of my TSW reviews, not to mention the supportive comments that people often leave, but two things can be true at once. As I have said before, I don't want to keep making videos on the topic if it's at the expense of my sanity and patience, especially when it's Dovetail games we're often dealing with. And this is all without getting into the delayed release of the Tadami line, for which people have already been waiting absolutely stonking ages, so I understand why some of them are pissed off. The delay was apparently due to major performance issues that the QA team picked up. Wait, Dovetail has a QA team? Anyway, this begs the question as to how the issue was only detected 3 days before the planned release, as if there couldn't be any more debacles in the already shambolic TSW6 era. Considering the long dark cloud that is TSW7 hanging over the horizon, anyone would think that Dovetail were intending for Tadami to be a TSW7 release all along, and only announced the release date for July 31 just to lead people on, as it were. Bloody Air New Zealand plane interfering with the recording. Anyway, now that that's gone, we can continue. So regardless of whether or not this suggestion of Dovetail delaying Tadami for TSW7 was actually the case, I still agree with those who think that this situation is still a bad look for Dovetail. They should have known well before the week of release if there were performance issues bad enough to cause a delay, especially considering the amount of time for which the Tadami line has been in development. I think it's the better part of 3 years now. To be fair to Dovetail, I will give them credit for postponing the Tadami line's release. That was a good call on their part, and goodness knows how much worse the firestorm would be if they released the route on July 31 anyway. For all I know, it could well have been a repeat of the Class 90 disaster. Whilst I wasn't intending, and still don't intend, to pick up the Tadami line at launch, or for a fair while after the fact, I still thought that I'd like to weigh in on the situation. In any case, and whenever it gets released, one wonders how well TSW's first Japanese route will do in terms of sales, considering the fact that Running Train exists now. I dare say there will be people who have had their itch for Japanese train simulators fulfilled by this one. Come to think of it, 2 of the train types in this game even look like the Kiha 40, despite being 2 or 3 car EMUs as opposed to a single coach diesel rail car. There's a significant number of people in the TSW community who are pissed off, not just about the Tadami line's release being delayed, but the various other goings-on relating to this game. But the way I see it, they are not angry armchairs bitching and moaning for the sake of it. They are paying customers who are passionate about TSW, but have been served a very raw onion time and time again by Dovetail's shenanigans. Just putting that out there in case some tiresome smarty pants tries, once again, to dismiss us lot as whiny armchairs who want the game to die. That sort of dismissive attitude towards valid criticism is not helping TSW's overall situation. Anyway, if your views on TSW are similar to mine, and you're not already a reviewer like myself, TB76 Returns, Maverick, or Train Sim Society, I encourage you to make your voices heard with your own review videos. Alternatively, I would recommend avoiding purchases of the DLC if you can help it. Honestly, I can't think of many better ways to really send a message to Dovetail saying that people are sick of the terrible state in which TSW has ended up, and that DTG needs to get their acts together. Anyway, if you've stuck around to the end of the video, you win an organ that has visited Australia and the English county of Gloucestershire. It's the Sydney Lydney Kidney.